If I offered you an investment today that guaranteed, with 100% mathematical certainty, that you would lose half of your wealth over the next 20 years, would you take it? Of course not. You would call that a scam. You would call that financial suicide. But here's the irony. That is exactly what you are doing when you keep your money in a safe savings account. We have been taught a linguistic lie. We have been taught that safety means the preservation of the number in your bank account. If you have $10,000 today and you have $10,000 10 years from now, you feel safe. You didn't lose anything. Mathematically, this is false. Economics does not care about the number on the screen. It cares about purchasing power. If you have $10,000 today and 10 years from now that money buys 30% less food, fuel, and housing, you haven't stayed safe, you have crashed. This video is not about mindset, it is not about hustle. This video is about the cold, hard math of the safety trap. We are going to run the numbers on inflation, opportunity cost, and real rate of return to prove that playing it safe is actually the riskiest financial strategy you can execute. By the end of this 20 minutes, you will understand why the bank account is not a vault. It is a slow-burning fire. To understand the trap, we first have to distinguish between two critical concepts: nominal value and real value. Nominal value is the face value of your money. It is the number printed on the bill. $100 is $100. Real value is what that money can actually exchange for in the economy. The safety trap occurs when you fixate on the nominal number while ignoring the real number. Let's look at the data. From 1990 to 2023, the average annual inflation rate in the U.S. was roughly 2.5% to 3%. Now, 3% sounds small, it sounds negligible, but humans are terrible at understanding exponential functions. Let's apply the rule of 72. The rule of 72 is a mental math shortcut to calculate how long it takes for a value to double, or in this case, halve. You divide 72 by the annual rate. 72 divided by 3% inflation equals 24. That means every 24 years, the value of your cash is cut in half. If you are 30 years old today and you put $100,000 in a safe under your mattress, by the time you are 54, that money is mathematically worth $50,000 in today's terms. You didn't spend a dime. You didn't make a risky bet. You didn't lose it in the stock market. You lost 50% of your life's work simply by standing still. This is what economists call negative real yield. If your bank pays you 0.5% interest, but inflation is 3%, your real yield is negative 2.5%. The math is brutal. $100,000 times 1 minus 0.025 to the power of 20 years. You aren't saving, you are bleeding. So why do we do it? Why do we hoard cash? Because we misunderstand the definition of risk. In the world of the average consumer, risk means the possibility that the number goes down tomorrow. You look at the S&P 500, you see it drop 20% in 2022, and you say, that is risky. You look at your savings account, it stays flat, and you say, that is safe. But in financial mathematics, there are two types of risk: volatility risk and permanent loss of purchasing power risk. Volatility is the fluctuation of price. The stock market is volatile. It goes up and down. Standard deviation measures this. But history shows that over any 20-year rolling period, the S&P 500 has never produced a negative return. The volatility smooths out. Cash has zero volatility. The number never jumps around. But cash has a 100% probability of permanent loss of purchasing power. There has never been a 20-year period in modern history where cash gained value. It always loses. So here is the choice you're making. Option A, investing, you accept high volatility in exchange for a high probability of growth. Option B, cash, you accept zero volatility in exchange for a 100% guarantee of loss. When you frame it mathematically, keeping all your money in the bank isn't a risk-free strategy. It is a guaranteed loss strategy. You are paying a premium of 3% per year just to avoid seeing a red line on a chart.
That's an expensive emotional crutch.
Let's quantify the damage. We need to look at opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is not just money you lost, it is the money you failed to make. Let's run a 30-year simulation. We have two individuals, Safe Sam and Investor Ian. Both have $10,000 to start, and both save $500 a month for 30 years. Scenario A, Safe Sam. Sam is afraid of the stock market. He keeps his money in a high-yield savings account. Let's be generous and assume he gets an average of 2% interest over 30 years. Total principal invested, $190,000. Interest earned, roughly $75,000. Final balance, around $265,000. That sounds okay, right? He has $250,000. But wait, we have to adjust for inflation. If inflation averaged 3%, his real purchasing power is actually only about $130,000 in today's money. He worked for 30 years, saved diligently, and mathematically he went backward. Scenario B, Investor Ian. Ian buys a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Historically, the S&P 500 returns about 10% annually, nominal, or 7% real inflation adjusted. Let's use the conservative 7% real return. Total principal invested, $190,000. Compound growth, around $420,000. Final balance, around $610,000. Look at the delta. Safe Sam has $265K, Investor Ian has $610K. The difference is $345,000. That $345,000 is the price of safety. Sam paid $345,000 for the privilege of not seeing his account balance fluctuate. If I told you that safety insurance costs $11,000 a year, would you buy it? Probably not, but that is exactly what Sam did. We all know about compound interest working for you. Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world, but nobody talks about reverse compounding. Inflation compounds. If inflation is 3% this year, goods cost $103. If inflation is 3% next year, it is 3% on top of the $103. It costs $106.09. It creates an exponential curve of destruction. Let's look at the cost of living. In 1990, the median U.S. house price was roughly $120,000. In 2024, it is roughly $420,000. That is not just prices going up, that is the currency collapsing relative to assets. If you held cash during that period, you didn't just miss out on gains, you became mathematically poorer relative to society. Your labor, the hours you worked in 1990, stored in cash, has evaporated. If you worked 100 hours in 1990 to save $1,000, that $1,000 represented a certain amount of economic energy. Today, that $1,000 represents perhaps 20 hours of labor. The bank vault didn't steal your money, it stole your time. The safety trap is a mechanism that deletes your past labor. Assets, real estate, stocks, gold, act as a battery. They store the economic energy. Cash is a battery that leaks. Now, I know the counter-argument, but Victor, I need cash for emergencies. I can't put my rent money in the stock market. Correct. This brings us to the liquidity paradox. Liquidity, cash, is essential for survival, but toxic for wealth. We need to treat cash like oxygen. You need oxygen to survive. If you don't have it for 3 minutes, you die. But if you take in too much oxygen, you get oxygen toxicity. It damages your cells. Financial health requires a specific dosage of cash. The math suggests an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. This is your insurance policy. It is not an investment. You accept the loss to inflation on this specific pile of money because it prevents you from having to sell assets at a loss during a crisis.
The trap happens when you hold more than that. If your expenses are $5,000 a month, you need $30,000 in cash. If you have $100,000 in cash just to feel safe, that extra $70,000 is rotting. It is serving no purpose. It is not hedging risk, it is creating risk. The wealthy do not hold cash, they hold assets. When they need liquidity, they use leverage against their assets, or they use cash flow from the assets. They minimize their exposure to the melting ice cube of fiat currency. So how do we escape the safety trap? We have to switch our default setting from saver to owner. Step 1. Calculate your burn rate. Know exactly what 6 months of expenses looks like. That is your cash cap. Any dollar above that number must be evicted from the bank account. Step 2. Understand the risk premium. When you buy the S&P 500, you are buying the top 500 profitable companies in America. Is it risky? Short term, yes. But mathematically, betting against human innovation and productivity over 20 years is a much riskier bet. When you hold cash, you are betting that the government will stop printing money. History tells us the probability of that is 0. Step 3. Automate the flow. Do not rely on willpower. Set up an automatic transfer, paycheck to checking to cap reached to investment account. Remove the emotion, make it a mathematical function. In conclusion, playing it safe is a misnomer. It is a strategy that guarantees the erosion of your labor, the reduction of your purchasing power, and the failure of your financial independence. The math is binary. You can either accept the volatility of the market and preserve your wealth, or you can accept the certainty of inflation and destroy your wealth. Comfort is expensive. Safety is a trap. Stop saving, start owning.